You know, it always surprises me when I talk to people that I consider truly creative, that they tell me how much work goes into it. It's not just some natural talent necessarily they were born with. Hi, everyone. I'm Pam Barnhill, and welcome to episode 47 of the 10 Minutes to a Better Homeschool podcast. I help homeschoolers create doable systems, beat burnout, and bring more joy to their homeschool days. Okay, this episode is a little bit longer than our normal episode because the interview was just so good. I'm chatting today with the author of the Green Ember series, S.D. Smith, and we're talking about not only his new book, which is a collaboration between him and his son, but also how can we go about nurturing creativity in our kids, even when we're not necessarily creative ourselves. So just to let you know, we do have a Green Ember set of morning time plans in our morning time shop. So if you are a fan of S.D. Smith and his work, The Green Ember, and you would like to immerse yourself into the Green Ember world with a little bit of truth, goodness, beauty, art, nature study, poetry that was inspired by the books, you can find that at pambarnhill.com/shop. And now on with the interview. S.D. Smith is the best-selling author of the Green Ember series and a popular speaker. Sam enjoys walks, soccer, reading, church, chocolate chip cookies, and family time. And he lives in Grandview, West Virginia with his wife and 4 children. And we're so excited to have him here. He has a brand new book coming out. And one of the really cool things about this book is there is a co-author on it, J.C. Smith, who I had never really heard of this guy before. So, Sam, tell us about this book and your co-author.
You've heard of him. You've had dinners with him lots of times. You've met. This is my son Josiah Caleb Smith, and I am so excited. He's 16 years old, and he is. It's neat because I wrote the Green Ember series, and people have been asking me a long time, "What's next? What's coming after this?" And it's funny that I did to find my next series, to find co-author, I didn't have to look far. I had to kind of look down the hall to the smelly teenage boy's bedroom.
I love it. I love it so much. Okay, so this kind of brings us to our topic for today, because I imagine there are a lot of moms out there listening and they're like, there's no way I could get my 16-year-old boy to write a book. So how do we do that? How do we encourage our kids to be creative in these ways?
Well, all my kids, and they're all different. Josiah, Caleb here, JC, he is unique in that he's sort of really focused on storytelling and creativity as we kind of think of creativity. I kind of almost hate that. I hate it when people use I'm a creative or sort of like as a noun kind of. That's irritating to me. I just want to sort of gag with that. But he is one of those people, whatever you want to call him. Like he does have sort of that what we traditionally call creative bent. But all my kids are creative. Mike is creative on the soccer field. He's really inventive and is good at math and that kind of thing. So kids are different in different ways. So but if you're thinking uniquely about sort of the traditionally creative fields of art, music, writing, that sort of thing, I do have some advice. I used to think, well, I'll just model this, as a writer. I'm never going to teach it. But then, tons of kids ask me questions. Tons of parents ask, what can I do to help? I've got a kid that's weird like you, Sam. A kid that's got this sort of big imagination. And I do have some things I think about. For how to sort of coach those kids, and because I love sports, I like to think about coaching. But yeah, I mean, to me, I'd love to hear what you think about this, Pam. I don't want to put you on the spot, but feel free to just shoot me down because you are the expert here. But,
I don't know about that. Not in creativity, because okay, so my thing is, my kids want to be creative, but how do I make sure that they're like learning the stuff that they need to learn to write for college if they want to go to college or something like that? So I'm hoping you'll address that.
Well, that's, you're like my wife. My wife thinks about that kind of stuff. She's very practical. I'm sort of like big vision. And she's like, how do we get this done? She's not afraid to work. She works hard. She's like, you tell me what we're doing here and I'm going to execute. Like she's a real doer, which is a good combo for us, because I can be a little bit, head in the sky a little bit. I just think so. First of all, to me, there's nothing that replaces encouragement. that encouragement is so vital. That's like that lifeblood. So it's gotta, somebody's got to be in your corner. And for me, it definitely was my mom. My mom thinks I'm some sort of combination of Bob Dylan and Batman and I don't know what, but I've always felt that from her. I felt that encouragement from the very beginning. And for some people you don't, and it's tough if you're homeschooling because you've got to be the person who sort of, maybe grades or holds accountable. And that's really all parents. We've got to set these boundaries and stuff. We got to enforce those, but maybe that's even more of a reason why encouragement is so important. I think about C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. When Tolkien was writing The Lord of the Rings, he was, he would share the chapters with C.S. Lewis, his good friend, and Lewis was a big champion for him, just over and over. You've got to keep going. He was a massive encouragement. And then when it came time for Lewis to share The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the first Narnia book, he shared it with Tolkien, and Tolkien kind of hated it. And
Tolkien was a little bit of a curmudgeon.
He could be at times. He was a purist and about storytelling, and Lewis is throwing in all kinds of weird stuff in these stories that are the mythology wasn't as coherent. So he sort of, but that stung big time. And so I think we very likely could have had no Narnia if it weren't for a man named Roger Lancelin Green, who told Lewis, you have to publish this. This is wonderful. So that encouragement was so powerful in Lewis's life. And I think that we all need people like Roger Green. There are tons of Tolkiens in the world, tons of people ready to tell you, it's not good enough. You're not good enough, all that kind of thing. There's a lot of that waiting. And of course, we have our own sort of inner voice that's often especially kind of creative people tend to be a little bit, maybe I'm not a scientist, obviously, but I tend to see a lot of people who are introverted, who feel things deeply. So the internal sort of monologue of our own voice telling us things, not always telling the truth. So I'm not saying like just empty, like, sort of modern, like you are enough, you can do, not just like platitudes, but like reality. Here's who you are, rooted in your identity in Christ, or, that for me, that's really important in your faith. But what is your identity? Who are you? And sort of encouraging in that way. But there's nothing that can replace encouragement. And just moving on from encouragement, I feel like, fostering discipline, like, there is sort of external discipline of a parent, sort of holding accountable, but then there's this sort of like moving towards self-discipline is so important. So habits, training habits, like all those little things that you're already trying to do, all those things that you already care about a whole lot. Your creative kid needs that. Like all the things where you say, no, you've got to clean your room. If you're learning like finance, you've got to, like, if you're a little bit older, like you've got to learn how to balance a budget or like make a meal plan or all those kind of things. We're trying to teach our kids to be like people who can function. Like those are so valuable because creative people often get sort of left off the hook with that kind of thing. They often say, well, I'm sort of above those rules, or I don't need those rules because I'm a creative. Actually, they need all those disciplines, those self-disciplines, those habits. John Dryden said that we first make our habits and then our habits make us. And I just feel like it's so powerful and so important. All those things, it's like giving, the difference between sort of successful people that about, I think in the writing world or music world, is that people who had the habits to keep going and hustling. It's the same thing in business or ministry and all these kind of things. The people who kind of keep going and have these habits that are like frames to keep them on the track. That is such a powerful gift. So I'll just say, like, even if the person is like a little bit resistant or introverted and fearful of those things, like, being with them, big love and big emphasis on habits and discipline, feels like those go hand in hand together and are so important.
Yeah. Stephen King has a quote about how like amateurs wait for inspiration, but like professionals just get up and get to work. And my kids had convinced me this year, like, Mom, we don't want to use a writing curriculum this year. We just want to write what we want to write. And I'm like, okay, we can do that. We're doing kind of a little writer's workshop thing, but you have to write every day. That's the rule. Like, you don't have to follow any specific curriculum, but you do have to write every single day. And so that's been the thing that we're doing. And then we're, figuring out from there where that inspiration comes from to write every day, but we're making the habit of doing the writing. Okay. So encouragement, discipline, like these are mom things for sure. What else?
Yeah. Yeah, there's nobody better. That's why there's nobody better for, that's a big thing to me. There's nobody better to encourage and equip your child than you. Like there's not a guru out there that's better. You have, I think, what it takes to coach a creative kid. Even if you're kind of more of a concrete thinker, that organized, more like what Pam was saying, or my wife is like, that's like, those are so valuable. People, I would just say, people like me need people like that, if that's sort of your natural bent. But yeah, I totally agree with you about the inspiration thing. Jack London said, don't wait for inspiration, go after it with a club. And that's like, I love that. That is like, because that's what we need to hear. Because waiting for the muse to strike, waiting for the perfect circumstances, that is not it. That is not going to work. And again, not to hit you with a million of my favorite quotations, but Aristotle, this is one of my favorite ones. He says, "We are what we continually do. Excellence, therefore, is a habit."
Yeah,
and just that this is powerful. So I love what you're doing with your kids, like that whole, like, yeah, okay, we don't have to have the sort of the curriculum, what you think of as a traditional class, but it's going to be a habit, and it's going to be every day. And it's better if they I like the fact that they said, hey, I want to do this.
yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, here it is. I'm going to help coach you in what you're doing. So that's another thing. You don't have to like micromanage or helicopter parent, or kind of, you don't have to like go around and say, here's every little step of what you're going to do. I was at a soccer game last night, and there's people from the crowd, like parents from the crowd, yelling like at the kid, like, stay calm, and they get the ball, like, pass it, it's okay, relax out there, and I'm just like, dude, if you would just shut up maybe for a second, they probably give them a second out there, and maybe they will. So it got to be some sort of self, motivation and self-discipline that you're encouraging, because at the end, the point is what? It's independence. We want them to be able to be going out, launching on their own. For sure.
And I think it's like creating so much of what we do in homeschool, and I don't think we talk about this enough, is like creating an atmosphere. Like, so creating an atmosphere where they can thrive by not only like the things we put in the atmosphere, but also the kind of situations that we set up in the atmosphere. So providing them the time to write, giving them any materials they need, like we have the little writing shelf set up with the thesaurus and the jar full of journal ideas that they can pull out, and all the fancy pens so they can pick the ones they want, like, if they need that. So, just creating an atmosphere of time and space for them to be able to move into, to create.
I don't know. That's like the best advice, right? To me, like you're talking about setting a creative trap. Like it's like a little spider web of like creativity or whatever. And you're just waiting for these innocent little bugs to go fly into it. I love that. Leaving out the guitar, making a little corner where there's music and chords out, and you kind of got what you need there. You got a capo, you've got the tuner. It's like it's you're removing barriers, really, and you're incentivizing, and you're making it what it actually is, which is wonderful, beautiful, and good and pleasant. And it's kind of the TV or other things. It's easy to kind of hit, but it's easy. It's part of one of the reasons why it's so the internet and all that kind of. It's like you want the iPad because it just gives you right away, like so fast. So it's almost like there's a higher need to sort of incentivize and set these sort of creative traps for things that we might value, that might help our souls even more. It might form our souls a little bit more. And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about forming, who you are and what you love.
I love that. I love the idea of setting a creative trap. And it makes me think of like the mom who bemoans the fact that her children never make art, yet there's no place for them to make art. Like, you're always worried about the floor, they're always worried about the tabletop. And so, or you never leave the art supplies out because you're worried about what kind of mess they're going to make. And I'm preaching to the choir here. Like, I'm talking about myself. I can remember having done that at certain times in the past. And it's like, well, no wonder they don't make art. You have to, create the space for that. So, last question, because we do have our little 10-minute time limit here. What if you don't feel like you're a creative person yourself? And I know you don't necessarily have this problem, Sam, but is there anything you could do to help? Like, how do you foster creativity in your kids if you just don't feel creative? Where do you get inspiration?
Well, I would push back a little bit and just say that that we all have imagination and creativity, like we talked about earlier. It's a capacity. It's like intellect. So you might be more of an intellectual person or a concrete kind of a thinker. So that means you have and I know that's true about you, is you have this very high intellectual capacity. And probably a lot of kids in this audience, a lot of the people listening to you, I'm guessing they're smart people. They're thinkers, and that's good. That's a gift from God. That's the gift of God, this intellect. And Lewis talked about intellect being the organ of truth, and that the imagination is the organ of meaning. And we all have it. We all have this capacity for imagination. So we don't have like imaginative kids and non-imaginative kids. You have people with a higher capacity for that kind of thing. But it can all grow, and that includes us as teachers. That includes all the moms. That's all of us. And I would just say there's no substitute for that. We struggle to try new things because, as adults, I think we're concerned about our dignity. We're concerned about looking foolish, so we don't want to try new things. It's much easier for us to say, I'm bad at basketball or I'm bad at math, and so we don't do it because it's safe, because we don't want to look silly. And I understand that, and there's some of that's maybe logical, but I would say there's probably nothing better than engagement. Than to model. To say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to come with you. I'm going to sit down with you and color for a little while. I'm going to, because, Buechner talked about sort of the best teachers teach themselves. They don't teach subjects, they teach themselves. And I think that's true. It's more is caught than taught. We have all these little maxims about that. So I would just say there's no substitute for joining in and modeling, and you don't have to be good at it. You don't have to be great at it. You can model the discipline part. You can model the generosity and the spirit at the heart of these habits. You can do that. Few coaches in sports are as good an athlete as the players. They're not great, but they can still be fantastic coaches, and they can participate and model. And you can make. So I would just say model and make, and I think you're making more than just like a little piece of art. You're doing something that is far more grand. You are modeling, you're making, you're helping to shape human beings made in the image of God, people who are beautiful and people who, like Lewis talked about, people who in the future, would be astonished to see what will become. And so what you're doing is kind of sacred. It's beautiful. It's also simple. Like I don't want to make it sound like, oh, you have to be a C.S. Lewis. You don't have to. I'm a country boy from West Virginia. That's true. My papa was a country poet. That's who he was. He also kind of worked on cars and had, a garden, and like simple people. Like I'm not very far removed from like subsistence farmers. We're very simple people. So it's not complicated. It's not, you don't have to overthink it. You can be not great at it and still give your kids an awful lot just by modeling and generosity and showing.
I love it. Okay, Sam, tell everybody where they can find Jack Zulu and the Waylander's Key.
I'm so excited about this book because it's sort of like what we're talking about. This book I wrote with my son, and that was such an honor and such a privilege, and what a delight. But it's easy to find at sdsmith.com or jackzulu.com. And yeah, I hope it's my first new series that I've try. We've got 10 Green Ember books. This is the first new series, and I hope people will give it a chance. I think you'll enjoy it.
Are there any rabbits at all in the story?
That's funny. I should have put some in there. I should have put a rabbit. I don't think there are. There are plenty of swords, but no rabbits.
Okay, so that sounds awesome. Do go check out that book. And thank you so much, Sam, for coming on today and chatting with us about this idea of nurturing creativity. So many great tips here. So this is a good one.
Thank you, Pam.
And there you have it. I told you that was a good one. So many great little inspirational bits there. Now, if you would like links to any of the resources that Sam and I chatted about today, including a link to where you can get your very own copy of Jack Zulu and the Waylander's Key, you can find that on the show notes for this episode of the podcast. That's at pambarnhill.com/TMBH47. And do go check out that new book. Now, I will be back again next week. We're going to be talking all about getting food on the table as a homeschool mom, because I know that that's something that takes up way more time and energy than you want it to. Until then, keep on homeschooling.